Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Iran has started up advanced centrifuges that enrich uranium more quickly in a new breach of the 2015 deal. President Hassan Rouhani inaugurated nearly 200 cascades at the Natanz uranium enrichment plant. This coincides with the Vienna talks and a UN report indicating a fresh violation of the nuclear pact. In Myanmar, security forces have reportedly shot dead 60 more civilians who were protesting against the February 1st military coup near Yangon. Over 600 protesters have been killed in the crackdown so far. Meanwhile, ethnic armed groups who oppose the military's action attacked a police station and killed at least 10 officers. In India, 5 people have been killed as violence marred the 4th phase of the West Bengal Assembly elections. An 18-year-old voter was shot dead by miscreants outside a booth in the Pathancholi region. Meanwhile, security forces killed 4 persons in the Shitalkuchi area for allegedly attempting to snatch rifles. India has reported the highest daily COVID-19 cases since the pandemic began, with 144,000 infections overnight. Here in Pakistan, the virus has claimed 100 lives and infected more than 5,000 people in the last 24 hours. The nationwide death toll has crossed 15,300. Globally, there are 2.9 million fatalities and more than 134 million cases. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Iran has started up advanced centrifuges that enrich uranium more quickly in a new breach of the 2015 deal. President Hassan Rouhani inaugurated nearly 200 cascades at the Natanz uranium enrichment plant. At a ceremony, Rouhani said all of Iran's nuclear activities are peaceful and for civilian purposes. This coincides with the Vienna talks and a UN report indicating a fresh violation of the nuclear pact. While the amount of enriched uranium extracted is small, diplomats say it amounts rather to a fresh breach. In Myanmar, security forces have reportedly shot dead 60 more civilians protesting against the February 1st coup near Yangon. Over 600 protesters have been killed in the military crackdown so far. Separately, ethnic armed groups who oppose the military's action attacked a police station and killed at least 10 officers. Meanwhile, Myanmar's envoy to the UN has called for tougher sanctions against the military government. A group of deposed politicians urged the Security Council to intervene in Myanmar's political crisis, but the ruling military remained defiant and refused entry to a UN special envoy. In India, 5 people have been killed as violence marred the 4th phase of the West Bengal Assembly election. Clashes broke out between activists of the ruling Trinamool Congress and the Bharatiya Janata Party in Cooch Behar district. An 18-year-old voter was allegedly shot dead by miscreants outside a booth in the Pathancholi area. The culprits, who are yet to be identified, managed to flee. Meanwhile, security forces killed 4 persons in the Shitalkuchi area. Police claim forces opened fire on locals after they attempted to snatch their rifles. Election authorities said a report on the incident has been sought from the district officials. Farmers have blocked national expressways in Haryana in a bid to intensify their protest against the 3 agricultural laws. The union gave a call for the 24-hour blockade on Friday. In a statement, the union said the move is a part of this month's strategy that includes marking significant historical occasions. Police have deployed additional personnel at the route. Hundreds of farmers have been camping at the 3 border points of Delhi despite more than 250 deaths. They say the laws enacted by the centre last September will jeopardize their living and must be rolled back. In Pakistan, Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee General Nadeem Raza says the world must take note of human rights violations in occupied Kashmir. He was addressing a passing out parade of cadets at the Pakistan Military Academy in Kakul. He said Pakistan is committed to regional stability and its consistent peace overtures must be recognized. General Raza added the entire nation stands united against terrorism and extremism. He congratulated the cadets for successful completion of their training. Cadets from Sri Lanka, Iraq, Maldives and Nepal were among those who passed out. Turkey says the US will send 2 warships to the Black Sea next week and they will remain there till May 4. This comes amid heightened border tensions between Ukraine and Russia. Commenting on the development, the Pentagon said the military routinely sends warships to the region. Spokesperson John Kirby said it was not anything new. In response, Russia said it is concerned over the increased Black Sea naval activity by what it called powers who do not have a coastline in the region. The Deputy Foreign Minister said visits by NATO countries and the length of the stay of their warships have increased. The Saudi-led coalition says it has destroyed another explosive-laden drone launched by the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Saudi state media says the drone was aimed at civilian areas in Khamis Mushaid. The coalition forces said they also destroyed a ballistic missile heading towards the Jizan airport. Earlier, the rebels claimed their explosives-laden drone hit the target at a sensitive site at Aba airport. Tensions between the two sides have flared up, prompting the international community to urge a ceasefire. Meanwhile, the Yemeni government has exchanged 17 prisoners with the UAE-backed Southern Transition Council. In the West Bank, a Palestinian teenager has lost his right eye after Israeli forces shot at him in the southern city of Hebron. Palestinian media says the occupation troops shot a rubber-coated round. They also fired tear gas and rubber bullets at people protesting against settlements in East Jerusalem. An Israeli lawmaker was injured as police beat him during the demonstration. Ofer Kassif's spokesperson said the demonstration was peaceful and calm until security forces arrived. Meanwhile, Palestine's Hamas group has slammed Israel for rejecting the World Court's investigation into war crimes. Tributes are pouring in from across the world for the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, a day after his death.
U.S. President Joe Biden said the Duke's legacy will live on in all the charitable endeavors he shaped. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called Philip a man of great purpose and conviction. New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern spoke of the Duke of Edinburgh's strong connection to New Zealand. German Chancellor Angela Merkel expressed great sorrow over his demise. French President Emmanuel Macron said Philip lived an exemplary life defined by bravery. Russian President Vladimir Putin wished Queen Elizabeth courage and mental fortitude in the face of an irreparable loss. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan said the Duke was a wise elder, imbued with the spirit of public service. Australia lowered national flags at the Sydney harbour to pay respects to the Prince.
In Ireland, a car was set on fire and riot police lined the streets in Belfast despite appeals to postpone protests after Prince Philip's death. Pro-British loyalist militants say there had been a spectacular collective failure to understand their anger over Brexit. Despite appeals for calm from London, Dublin and Washington, the nightly unrest spread further into Belfast. Some masked individuals threw bricks and missiles at the police. The clashes have been some of the worst violence in years and raised concerns about 1998 peace accord. India has reported the highest daily COVID-19 cases since the pandemic began, with 144,000 infections overnight. Globally, there are 2.9 million fatalities and more than 134 million cases. More in this report.
As the third wave of COVID-19 grips a number of countries, authorities warned that it is way more serious than the previous ones given new variants. Peru's President Francisco Sagasti has offered an apology to everyone who lost loved ones, saying the state had failed during the pandemic. Healthcare personnel in Mexico are protesting for being left out of the vaccine rollout. In Brazil, President Jair Bolsonaro has attacked the pending Congress probe into the federal government's pandemic response. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has warned that Brazil is facing a raging inferno of an outbreak as cases and deaths soar.
Even by the time you get vaccines into a country, by the time you get them into people, and you're getting them to a relatively small proportion of the population, that will have a small effect in limiting the risk to some people. But what you're dealing with here is a raging inferno of an outbreak, and that requires population-level action in the rapid identification, isolation, quarantining, because you have to approach this at that scale to slow this thing down.
And as vaccination drives escalate, so do the problems linked to it. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control says it is aware of several incidents involving adverse reactions to the Johnson & Johnson vaccine in 4 states. Europe's drug regulator also said it is reviewing rare blood clots in 4 people in the U.S. who received the jab. Meanwhile, there remains a shocking imbalance in the global distribution of vaccines. WHO says 1 in 4 people are vaccinated in high-income countries, while only 1 in 500 is inoculated in low-income countries.
There remains a shocking imbalance in the global distribution of vaccines. More than 700 million vaccine doses have been administered globally, but over 87% have gone to high-income or upper-middle-income countries, while low-income countries have received just 0.2%.
In another distressing news for AstraZeneca, Australia has ordered more alternative vaccines, setting back its vaccination rollout. In Thailand, hospitality workers are fearing for their livelihoods as the country announced more curbs in 40 provinces for 2 weeks.
Coronavirus has claimed another 100 lives in Pakistan, while over 5,000 people tested positive in the last 24 hours. The Health Ministry says the death toll has risen to 15,329. The ministry says the positivity ratio has jumped to 10.47%. It said the number of active cases has crossed 73,000. Nearly 716,000 people have contracted the virus so far, out of which more than 627,000 have recovered. Meanwhile, Pakistan's envoy to the UN has called on the international community to avoid vaccine nationalism. In a press briefing in New York, Munir Akram warned that vaccine inequality will translate into economic disparity. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In Algeria, thousands took to the streets in the capital Algiers to mark the 112th Friday demonstration of Hair Rock. The protest movement has been campaigning for political changes in the country. Demonstrators called for the political establishment to depart and the army to quit politics. They vowed to keep protesting until Algeria becomes a state of rights and a civil state. President Abdulmajid Tebboune has set June the 12th as the date for early legislative elections. But protesters have rejected the polls, saying nothing has changed as the president belonged to the old regime. Thousands attended rallies across Australia to protest against ongoing Indigenous deaths in custody. They marked 30 years since the Royal Commission handed down its final report. First Nations people spoke with anger in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Canberra and Alice Springs. They said the recommendations by the Commission remain unrealised and underfunded. Researchers say at least 474 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have died in custody in the past 30 years. In the US, the doctor who performed George Floyd's autopsy last year says he stands by the homicide conclusion. At the murder trial, Dr. Andrew Baker testified he stood by the cause of the death he determined last year. In his report, the chief medical officer ruled that Floyd's death was caused by a cardiopulmonary arrest. Talking to the jurors, Baker said neither Floyd's use of fentanyl nor his heart disease caused the subdual. He added the neck compression during the arrest remained the primary cause of Floyd's death. The 19-year-old police veteran Derek Chauvin has pleaded not guilty to the murder and manslaughter charges. Rwanda has formally received a report from France detailing the French role in the 1994 genocide. Last month, the French Commission concluded Paris was blinded by its colonial attitude towards Africa. French historians handed over the report to Rwanda's President Paul Kagame in Kigali. Rwandan Foreign Minister Vincent Biruta said the most important thing is that historical truth has been established. Biruta said on the basis of this development, Rwanda and France can build a new relationship. The report said Paris bore serious and overwhelming responsibility for the genocide, but absolved France of complicity. It is hard to find much to rejoice during the pandemic, but an Egyptian artist is spreading joy in Cairo street by doing a cappella and imitating saxophone sounds. This report has the details.
A rare form of art in Egypt, a cappella is a genre of music performed without instruments. It relies on sounds and tunes produced through various vocal techniques of the artist. From the age of 16, Alexandrian musician Ziad Ibrahim began watching videos on social media, mastering his skills.
At first, I was playing music in tunnels, in the streets, on the tram and everywhere that I can simply reach people. I started making music in a very different way, strange to people's ears. It was something odd and controversial. This is very nice. This is very bad. So I tried to be special amongst everyone.
The young singer goes by the nickname Dr. Almaziga. He performs a cappella in public space around Cairo and Alexandria, where people regularly gather and watch.
Its exercises are like singing. Its exercises are vocalized and solfege, just like singing. The main source of the sound is from the stomach, and it is controlled by the throat. I put slight pressure on my throat and release the tune as if I'm singing, but while compressing the tune. So you can only hear the tone.
Mostly inspired by American singer Michael Winslow, Ibrahim is chasing uniqueness and individuality. Though Egypt is unfamiliar with Western forms of art, Ibrahim says he wants his country to embrace a cappella.
In Iraq, Mosul's largest Al-Rabia theater still lies in ruins even after 4 years of liberation from ISIS. But over the past few weeks, local volunteers have worked to remove dust and debris from the theater. More in this report.
Mosul's cultural and artistic life had always been part of the city's identity. Therefore, volunteers are playing their due role in reviving art in the vibrant city. Sponsored by local radio, the Watar Orchestra is the first of its kind to exist in years in Mosul. It is composed of youth from the Nineveh province's different religious groups.
Without a doubt, Mosul nowadays needs, for instance, this stage, this theatre. That is important for the city of Mosul, so that the artistic life, history, and artistic as well as creative identity of Nineveh returns at the present time, after the end of the most dangerous battle of our modern times.
It held its first concert titled The Art and Soul of MOSUL in front of a packed audience. The orchestra performed a series of traditional and folkloric musical pieces, some of them from MOSUL itself.
We, the administration of the Water Orchestra and of Radio Al-Ghad, decided to have our premiere in the ruins of Al-Rabia Theatre to give a message to the world that this city is a city of culture. The city of this theatre represents and is part of the soul of the people from Mosul.
Many who attended Vitar Orchestra's performance witnessed an event at a public theatre for the first time in their life. The orchestra now hopes to grow and perform in different parts of the country.
Elon Musk's company Neuralink has enabled a monkey to use a computer after a brain chip implantation. Details in this report.
Never seen a monkey play a video game. Watch Pager, who uses a joystick to follow a cursor on a screen. Neuralink implanted chips in more than 2,000 electrodes in the monkey's motor cortex that coordinates hand and arm movements. The device records and decodes electrical signals from the brain. The monkey moves the joystick out of habit, even after the scientists have unplugged it. Pager controls the cursor entirely with decoded neural activity. The company intends to expand its technology to help people with neurological disorders and disabilities. In August 2020, it unveiled a pig with a Neuralink chip installed, describing it as a Fitbit in your skull.
Another business updates, Chinese regulators have fined the Alibaba Group $2.75 billion for violating anti-monopoly rules. The penalty comes after a 4-month probe and marks the highest ever antitrust fine to be imposed in China. In a notice, the state regulators said the fine constitutes around 4% of Alibaba's 2019 revenues. The SAMR said it has ordered the company to stop illegal activities under China's anti-monopoly law. Meanwhile, Alibaba says it accepts the fine with full sincerity and will ensure its compliance. In a statement, the tech giant pledged to strengthen its operations per law. In football, Wolverhampton Wanderers beat a struggling Fulham 1-0 in their Premier League encounter. Wolves winger Adama Traore struck deep into stoppage time to quash Fulham's hopes of remaining in the competition. Traore settled the game by blasting the ball home from a tight angle with little time left. The goal was Traore's first in the league, ending a 48-game goal-less run for the winger. The win lifts Wolves to 12th place with 32 points, while Fulham remain 18th on 26. The players wore black armbands and observed a 2-minute silence to mark the passing of Prince Philip. In surfing, Carissa Moore and Italo Ferreira have won the Rip Curl Newcastle Cup in Mayweather, Australia. The title is the second stop on the World Surf League 2021 Championship Tour. Reigning 4-time WL champion Moore grabbed the women's title in 3 to 5 foot waves. The American dominated Australia's Isabella Nichols to claim her 24th tour win with a Ty Wendy Botha's record. Moore now heads into the Rip Curl Narrabeen Classic wearing the yellow leader's jersey. In the men's event, Brazil's Ferreira beat compatriot and 2-time WSL champ Gabriel Medina in the final. The victory moves Ferreira to the top of the rankings as he claimed the leader's jersey from American John Florence.
Lead on the rankings as he's fighting for a second world title.
In the National Basketball Association, Jason Tatum scored career-high 53 points to lead the Boston Celtics to a 145 to 136-point win over Minnesota Timberwolves. The win comes as Celtics' fourth in the last 5 games. More in this report.
23-year-old Tatum became the youngest player in Celtics history to cross the 50-point mark in a game. Jaylen Brown finished with 26 points, followed by Marcus Smart on 24 points with 8 assists. Meanwhile, Atlanta Hawks beat Chicago Bulls 120 to 108 to clinch their 5th win in the past 6 games. Trae Young recorded 42 points with 8 rebounds and 9 assists for the Hawks. In other contests, Washington Wizards edged Golden State Warriors 110 to 107 points, while New York Knicks ended 4-game winning streak of the Memphis Grizzlies with a 133 to 129 win.
Another weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.